That morning, the grand lobby of Hellberg International was bustling as usual. The soft tapping of heels echoed on the marble floor, phones rang, and employees whispered about deadlines and coffee. Sophia Atwater, the woman in the burgundy janitor's uniform, moved quietly through the familiar routine, mopping the floor, emptying trash bins, straightening chairs and tables. No one paid her any attention. She had always been a silent part of this building. But then, a small moment made the entire world pause. Jonathan Robert, the company's CEO, was walking across the lobby when he heard a voice, not in English. It was Mandarin, fluent and precise, so smooth that he stopped immediately. He looked around, thinking someone from the international business team had arrived early. But no, the voice came from the woman standing beside the information screen, Sophia. He saw her gently guiding an elderly guest, speaking in a warm and confident tone. A few minutes later, she turned and spoke with a delivery man, this time in Spanish. Then a supplier approached, carrying boxes with mislabeled tags. Sophia switched to French as naturally as if changing breath. Robert was stunned. When he stepped forward to ask, Sophia quietly explained that, besides the 3 languages he had just heard, she was also fluent in 6 others: German, Portuguese, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and could read Latin. A woman who had mopped the floors every night now appeared as a living treasure trove of languages, a gem hidden beneath a uniform and the indifference of routine. "Excuse me, were you speaking Mandarin just now?" Jonathan Robert asked, his voice calm but clearly struck with awe. Sophia turned. She looked slightly surprised to see the CEO of the company standing before her, the man she usually passed by in silence while cleaning the halls in the evening. She gave a gentle nod. "Yes, sir." "And Spanish, French?" "Those too," she answered, calmly, neither proud nor timid. He paused for a few seconds, as if reorganizing his thoughts. "Would you have a few minutes? I'd like to invite you up to my office." That sentence swept through Sophia's ordinary day like a strange wind. She had worked in this building for 13 years, walked past countless lit offices, mopped the polished stone floors countless times, but never once set foot on the executive floor. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded softly. "Yes, sir." The elevator doors opened, and for the first time, Sophia stepped into that luxurious space filled with the scent of leather and citrus oils. She sat in the CEO's office, where a world map covered in colorful pins hung on the wall, where espresso cups sat beside family photos, and gold medals from trade conferences in Brussels.
Robert looked straight at her. "I need to understand. Someone like you, with such remarkable language abilities, why are you working here as a cleaner?" Sophia took a deep breath. It had been a long time since anyone had asked her a question like that. "Do you have time?" she asked in return. "Because if you do, I'll tell you the truth." And then, in a calm, steady voice, she began to speak. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio," Sophia began, eyes looking forward, her tone gentle, without a trace of defensiveness. "An only child. My father was a welder, my mother a nursing assistant. We didn't have much, but my parents always taught me that education was the only way to rise. They treated learning like a religion. I listened, got a full scholarship to Kent State, majored in linguistics. I was working on my master's when my mom fell ill." She paused, hands tightening in her lap. "I dropped out to care for her. 6 months later, my father died of a stroke. Everything crumbled after that." Robert said nothing, just sat in silence, as though every piece of her story was a puzzle reshaping the way he saw the familiar world around him. "I had a child," she continued, "alone, broke, with no one to lean on. I did every job I could find: supermarkets, nursing homes, temp work. Eventually, a supervisor here offered me a night shift janitorial job. The pay was just enough to keep the lights on, and I could pick up my daughter after school." She looked up at him. "I didn't choose this job because I lacked skills. I chose it because it gave me time with my daughter." Robert gave a small nod. He could hear there was no bitterness in her voice, only truth, raw but grounded. "And the languages?" he asked. Sophia gave a soft smile. I never stopped learning. Borrowed old books from the library, listened to worn-out cassette tapes, watched news broadcasts in different languages. Some nights, dead tired, I'd still sit and read German newspapers. Not for a degree, just because it was the one thing that still made me feel like I had value. She paused, her gaze drifting slightly. But in 13 years here, no one ever asked what I knew. They only saw the uniform. And they assumed. The word assumed hung in the air, heavy and painfully true. Jonathan stood in the corner of the room, not understanding every word, but he understood the feeling. He saw the change, in the eyes, in the respect, in the way the guests nodded when she spoke. When the meeting ended, one of the Brazilian executives turned to him and said in English, "She's better than anyone we've worked with this year. Where did you find her?" Jonathan glanced at Sophia, who was now gathering water glasses and notepads. He smiled. "Right here," he replied. "She's always been here." The meeting with the Brazilian delegation concluded, but for Jonathan Robert, the most important takeaway wasn't written in the minutes. He didn't return to his office immediately. Instead, he took a slow walk around the service floor, eyes scanning the paint-chipped walls, ears picking up the squeak of rolling carts and the soft hum of ventilation. The place was the same, quiet, laborious, unnoticed. But it was here that a woman had proved talent doesn't need a spotlight to shine. That night, he sat in his car in the parking lot for a long time, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold. In his mind was the image of Sophia speaking Portuguese with a rare calm, and the life story she had shared, a journey of loss, sacrifice, and resilience. Then he thought of all the meetings about talent strategy, the conferences on unlocking internal potential, the budget spreadsheets for recruiting foreign professionals. How ridiculous! All those years, they searched everywhere for the right person, never realizing the treasure had been in the basement all along. The next morning, as Sophia cleaned the busy lobby like usual, her supervisor, Ron, walked over, scratching his head awkwardly. "Mr. Robert wants to see you. Again." Sophia froze. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, he just asked me to tell you." She wiped her hands, adjusted her uniform, and stepped into the elevator. But this time, everything felt different. People looked at her. A few whispered. A receptionist smiled politely, eyes hinting at knowing more than they let on. When she entered the office on the 18th floor, Robert was standing with his back turned, gazing out at the city through the glass wall. "Come in," he said, without turning around. "I've been thinking a lot." Sophia stood still, waiting. "We've overlooked too many talented people, not because they lacked ability, but because no one looked twice, and I don't want to keep doing that." He turned around, eyes fixed on her with determination. "I want to create a new position, a role this company desperately needs, even if it has never existed before. International Cultural and External Affairs Coordinator." Sophia blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you've proven that you can handle situations, connect people, and speak what no software can, sincerity. You don't just speak languages, you make people listen." She looked at him, a mix of disbelief and emotion. "I don't have a degree, no certificate. I'm just someone who used to mop floors." "You have what others don't: life experience, resilience, loyalty, and the ability to communicate beyond language barriers. I don't need a piece of paper. I need a real human being." Sophia still couldn't believe it. "Are you sure? People will talk." "Let them talk, as long as we do what's right." In that space of glass and cold steel, two hands gripped each other tightly. Not a polite handshake, but an agreement, a recognition. For the first time in her life, Sophia Atwater was invited to the table, not to serve coffee or wipe surfaces, but to make decisions. Monday, 7:45 a.m. Sophia Atwater stood in front of the glass door on the 12th floor, a place she used to pass by only to return a cleaning rag. Today, she wasn't wearing the burgundy uniform. She wore a simple beige blazer borrowed from an old friend. Low heels, hair neatly tied back. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were clear. A small nameplate gleamed in the morning light. Sophia Atwater, International Cultural and External Affairs Coordinator. The door opened. The room wasn't big, just enough space for a desk, a bookshelf, and a potted plant by the window. But to Sophia, it felt like an entirely new planet, unfamiliar, quiet, and filled with eyes waiting to see her stumble. And the truth was, not everyone welcomed her. At lunch, she walked into the employee break room. Two women sat close together, mixing salad and whispering. "That's her? The one who used to mop the third-floor bathroom?" "Yeah, heard she speaks 9 languages. Or maybe she's got someone pulling strings." Sophia didn't react. She was used to being looked through, judged by her uniform. But now, silence had become an echo. Some looked at her as if she were a glitch in the system, someone who disrupted the unspoken order that had existed for so long, that only those with degrees who followed the correct path deserved a seat at the leadership table. That afternoon, she met Victor, the head of External Affairs. A tall man, tie knotted to perfection, walked into her office with a stack of documents and a critical gaze. "You're the new hire?" he asked, without a handshake, without sitting down. "Yes," Sophia replied calmly. "I'm Sophia." Victor dropped the documents on her desk like a challenge. Contracts from Italy, a supplier issue in Dubai, and an ongoing mess in Brazil. "You think you can handle this?" She lifted her head, eyes steady. "I'll need a few hours to review, but yes, I believe I can." No thank you, no nod, just a turn of his back and the sound of the door clicking shut. Sophia sat still for a moment. Then she opened the first file, picked up a pen, and began to read, with full clarity and a determination honed by years of being unseen. That evening, when Robert stopped by to check in on her first day, he smiled at her brief reply. "I've had worse days." Then, after a short silence, she looked up and asked, "Why me? Why not just give me a bonus and leave everything as it was?" Robert leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Because I was once overlooked too. My father fixed cars in a town nobody remembers. I worked 3 jobs to get through college. Someone once told me I didn't look like I belonged in rooms like this." Sophia nodded slowly. "Now you're the one who decides who gets to walk in." "And I chose you," he said without hesitation, "because I see myself in you, and because you deserve it." After he left the office, Sophia opened the top drawer. Inside, she placed her old name tag, the one she used to wear clipped to her side that read janitorial staff. She didn't keep it out of regret, but as a reminder, where she had come from and why she had to keep going. Just 3 days after stepping into her new role, Sophia faced her first real test, not a contract, not an international meeting, but a private session with Eleanor Craig, a senior member of the board, known for her cold demeanor and zero tolerance. The meeting took place in the conference room on the 17th floor. Sophia stepped into the small room and saw Eleanor already seated, holding a thick folder, her gaze as sharp as a scalpel. "Sit," Eleanor said, without looking up. Sophia sat down, back straight, hands resting on her lap, as if preparing for a job interview all over again. "I've reviewed your file," Eleanor began. "No college degree, no management certifications, no experience in a corporate environment." "Yes, ma'am, that's correct." Eleanor looked up, folding her arms. "You were a janitor just 3 weeks ago. Now you're coordinating international affairs. Do you think that's reasonable?" Sophia held her gaze, calm and steady. "I wasn't chosen for my resume. I was chosen for what I've done and what I can continue to do." "Such as?" "I resolved 2 incorrect contracts from an Italian supplier. I also helped reopen a supply chain from Dubai that had been stalled for 3 months due to a language error. And I'm currently working with the legal team to finalize a verbal agreement with the Brazilian partners I interpreted for the other day. Eleanor paused. For the first time during the conversation, she hesitated. A slight furrow of her brow, just enough for Sophia to know her words had landed. You think a company should run on instinct and charm? Eleanor asked. No, ma'am, Sophia replied, her eyes lighting up. I think it should run on results. There was silence for a few seconds. Then Eleanor stood, closing the folder slowly. You're a gamble, Ms. Atwater. Sophia stood as well. Her voice was lower, but just as firm. My whole life has been a gamble, ma'am. I'm used to it. After that meeting, Sophia didn't return to her office right away. She stepped outside the building and sat alone on the stone bench across the street, the same spot where she had once looked up at the glass tower feeling invisible. Now people saw her, but not everyone was pleased about it. She took out her phone and called her daughter. Hi, Mom? Her daughter's voice came through, soft like a familiar greeting. Yeah, just needed to hear your voice for a bit. Are you okay? I'm fine, Sophia smiled. Just needed a reminder of why I'm here. They chatted briefly about little things. The new puppy, yesterday's meal, a movie they hadn't had time to watch. But it was her daughter's laughter that settled something in Sophia's heart. Just enough to make her rise, cross the street, step back into the building, and keep going. The next morning, someone had written a small message in marker on the whiteboard outside her office. We see you. No name attached, but those 3 words warmed her more than any speech or award ever could. After the meeting with Eleanor Craig, Sophia understood one thing. She would not be allowed to simply do well. She would have to do better than well, to dissolve doubt through the undeniable. And she began, little by little. In her first week, Sophia joined a meeting with a group of clients from Morocco, a North Africa market expansion project that had stalled for months due to cultural misunderstandings and language barriers. When she entered the meeting room, she didn't sit right away. She stood, offered a gentle smile, and greeted them in native Moroccan Arabic, a language most employees in the company had never even heard spoken. The atmosphere shifted immediately. One guest touched his chest, a traditional gesture of gratitude, and said, "No one has ever done this for us, not just using our language, but using respect." Sophia simply nodded, because you deserve to feel seen, to feel valued. After the meeting, those who had doubted her grew quiet. A few even admitted, no software, no diploma, no training program could replace the kind of connection Sophia was creating. But she didn't stop there. One afternoon, while sitting in the break room, Robert, the CEO, walked in with a coffee in hand. "I've been hearing a lot of good things about you," he said, his eyes still filled with pride. Sophia took a sip. "I've also heard plenty of not-so-good things." Robert laughed. "If no one's uncomfortable, it means you haven't made a real change." Then he looked at her seriously. "I'm thinking of building an internal training program for people like you, talented individuals hiding in nameless roles." Sophia didn't need much time to respond. "I've already started planning it in my head." Just a month later, a pilot program called Voice Inside was launched, a new initiative for employees at every level, from security guards to technicians, from warehouse workers to cafeteria leads. The program offered language courses, soft skill training, internal mentoring, and most importantly, the right to be seen. Sophia didn't just participate. She helped design the content, led sharing sessions, and coached people who had once been like her, quiet, unseen, but full of potential. Sometime later, she was invited to speak at a leadership conference for the logistics industry in Cincinnati. In front of hundreds, Sophia stood tall. No notes, no projector, no slides. "I used to mop floors," she began, "but I wasn't just that. I spoke 9 languages, solved problems, read contracts, understood people, but because of the uniform, no one ever looked long enough to notice. She looked directly at the room. So the next time you pass by someone without a title, ask yourself, what are you really overlooking? The room fell silent, then rose, applauding endlessly. On the way out, a young man approached her, eyes red. "My mom's a hotel housekeeper. She speaks 5 languages. I used to feel ashamed to tell people. Until today." Sophia gently touched his hand. Never be ashamed of where you start. The only thing to be ashamed of is when we fail to see the light in others. She walked on, steady, upright, needing no one's permission to be there. Not for the applause, but because she had brought her whole self, her past, her failures, her hope, and let that be the difference. Sophia's reputation spread like wildfire in the wind. She was no longer just the woman who speaks 9 languages. She had become a symbol of awakening, that talent wears no uniform, and that employees shouldn't be judged by their title or which floor their office is on. And that, in itself, made some people uncomfortable. In meetings, some eyes avoided hers when she spoke. A few mid-level managers began dropping hints. She's talented, sure, but does she really have management experience? Is someone trying to substitute inspirational buzz for real competence? Or maybe Robert's just playing PR. Worse, the rumors started to swirl that Sophia had once been recruited by the CIA, that she was a government plant sent in to reshape the leadership system from within. Some even wrote directly on the internal Slack. So, who's the next janitor getting promoted to boss? She saw the messages. No names attached, but she knew and felt every thorn hidden in the words. Then, one late afternoon, her assistant handed her a letter from the board's office. A meeting, no reason given, just the cold line. Thursday, 10 a.m., meeting room 17B. Be on time. Sophia knew this was no invitation. That morning, she wore a gray blazer, hair neatly tied back, and arrived 10 minutes early. Inside the meeting room, 3 board members were already waiting, including Eleanor Craig. "Ms. Atwater," Eleanor said, her gaze icy, "we need to discuss the legitimacy and strategic purpose of your current role." Sophia wasn't surprised, but this time she hadn't come to defend herself. She came to stand her ground. "I understand," she replied. "If needed, I can present every file I've handled in the past 3 months, the Morocco contracts, documents from Dubai, revision agreements with Brazil. I have detailed performance reports and client feedback." Another member cut in, voice tinged with skepticism. "But you have no certification, no formal promotion process. You are an exception, and that can set a dangerous precedent." Sophia raised her head. The dangerous precedent is when a company overlooks capable people just because they don't come from the upper floors. Eleanor folded her arms and stared at her for a long moment. Then she spoke slowly. "Aren't you afraid of being isolated?" Sophia gave a soft smile. "I've worked nights alone for years. I'm used to it." She stood up. "If there's anything else that needs clarification, I'm always available. But I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to do the work." And she left, walking slowly, but with her head held high. That afternoon, when she returned to her office, she saw a small piece of paper taped to the whiteboard. The handwriting was firm and deliberate. "Keep going. We're behind you." No signature, no decoration, but to Sophia, it meant everything. Because she understood, real change always comes with resistance. But if resistance alone were enough to stop her, she would have stayed in the basement forever. A week after the tense meeting with the board, Sophia walked into the CEO's office carrying a thick folder, the result of countless sleepless nights, a plan she had been quietly shaping. Robert was standing by the glass wall, gazing out over the distant city. When he saw her enter, he didn't look surprised. "I knew you'd come," he said, smiling. "Let me guess why." "Because it's time to start," Sophia said, placing the folder on his desk. "We've talked enough about hidden talent. It's time to act." He opened the folder. Each page outlined a clear step. Develop a program to identify and nurture talent among non-office staff. Launch classes in language skills, communication, and leadership. Invite employees from every level, from warehouse workers to security guards, to open interviews to share their untapped abilities. And most importantly, give them the right to be seen. The program's title was printed boldly on the cover page. Voice Inside, the Voice Within. Robert nodded slowly. "This is what I've always wanted to do, but I couldn't do it alone." "You're not alone anymore," Sophia replied. Less than 2 months later, Voice Inside was announced company-wide. No banners, no launch party, just a short email from the CEO. "Every talent deserves to be discovered. Let your voice within be heard." In the very first week, hundreds of employees signed up. One had been a language teacher back in their hometown. Another, an immigrant and former engineer, now worked the night shift at the warehouse. There was a janitor who spoke 3 languages, and a security guard who had once written a book. Sophia interviewed each of them personally. She didn't ask for degrees. She asked, "What dream have you left behind? What skill do you have that no one's ever seen? Are you ready to keep learning?" Each answer was a life story, a forgotten aspiration, now being called back into existence. One day, an intern, Bao, a shy Vietnamese student, asked her, "How did you learn 9 languages?" Sophia smiled, still holding her cup of tea. "One word at a time, just like you will." 3 months later, the 6th floor, now home to the new training center, was renamed the Atwater Room. No flowers, no ribbon-cutting ceremony, just a steel plaque engraved with the words, "Where forgotten voices become action." Sophia stood watching from the hallway. Inside, a group of employees was practicing Spanish. In another corner, a leadership from the ground-up session was in progress, led by a former maintenance technician. Robert stepped up beside her. "You made it happen." Sophia didn't reply right away. She just looked into the room, at the people who once went unnoticed, now sitting in the light. "No," she said after a moment, "we're just getting started." One quiet weekend afternoon, Hallberg International was more silent than usual. Sophia remained in her 12th floor office, the late-day sunlight pouring through the glass, stretching across the wooden floor like a carpet of light. On her desk was a warm cup of tea and a stack of folders, not reports, but profiles of newly selected employees for the Voice Inside program. Each face appeared before her. A single mother who had once been an accountant back in Honduras, a warehouse worker with exceptional data analysis skills, and a young receptionist who dreamed of becoming a diplomat.